extinguishing raging fires, quenching the thirsty ground, restoring life to parched landscapes. For us worried and weary souls, may our time together provide us healing and a sense of hope and possibility to transform a world in desperate need of healing. Come and let us worship together. This morning, our opening hymn was going to be The Fire of Commitment. Last night, as I was getting ready for the service, it just hit me. I was like, I can't sing this song today, not this morning. And so instead, I want to sing another song about fire, sort of destructive fire, which is what's going on. As many of you know, I'm from LA County. I've lived in places that have been very close to wildfires. I know people, like I'm sure many of you do, who have been displaced by the fires burning down in the LA area. You may know people like I do who have lost their homes. And yet, we must eternally have hope. And so this song that we sing this morning by Linda Allen, it's an a cappella song. I'll sing it through once, and then I'll sing it as a call and response. We have been burned by the fire, and we are ashes and smoke. But we will rise higher and higher on the wings of compassion, justice, and hope. We have been burned by the fire. We have been burned by the fire. And we are ashes and smoke. And we are ashes and smoke. But we will rise higher and higher. But we will rise higher and higher on the wings of compassion, justice, and hope. On the wings of compassion, justice, and hope. Let's put that all together. We have been burned by the fire, and we are ashes and smoke. But we will rise higher and higher on the wings of compassion, justice, and hope. One more time. We have been burned by the fire, and we are ashes and smoke. But we will rise higher and higher on the wings of compassion, justice, and hope.
And now we light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. If you're online, please light your chalice or the candle in your heart as I light the chalice here in the sanctuary. Then type in the chat where you're lighting from.
This morning, I share words written this week by the Reverend David A. Miller as Ines lights our chalice. Like many things in this world, one thing can have many meanings. Fire can be a source of warmth and illumination. Fire can also blow in many directions and be a source of destruction, danger, and fear. The efforts, resources, and energy of this congregation and its people can go in many directions. May we always strive to be that which uses the flame to illuminate the glowing spirit of this congregation. May we remember those who are suffering and both the danger and good that can come from the heat of the flame. May we serve the mission of this congregation to use the flame of this glowing chalice to make the transforming warmth of love and justice to our beautiful and hurting world. As we light this chalice this morning, may that be so. And now I invite you to rise and join me in saying the affirmation of this congregation. You'll find the words on the screen and also in the order of service. They are also inscribed in many of our hearts, and we say it in English and in Spanish as a symbol of the many languages of this community and beyond the many languages of the soul. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek truth and freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls may grow into harmony with the divine. This we covenant with one another. El amor es la doctrina de esta iglesia. La búsqueda de la verdad es su sacramento y el servicio es su oración. Habitar juntos en paz, buscar la verdad con libertad y seguir la humanidad juntos con el fin
de que todas las almas puedan crecer en armonía con lo divino. Esto es lo que pactamos unos con otros. We light this chalice in recognition of the Tamian and Muwekma Ohlone indigenous peoples who were the first humans to inhabit and sustain the land thousands of years ago before settler colonizers arrived. We honor the resilience of these indigenous peoples in the face of devastating harm. And we lift up the resilience of their neighboring tribe to the south, the Amamutsan tribal band, with whom we are now working to preserve their sacred land of Juristak and to ensure that their culture continues to thrive. Welcome to the worship with the First Unitarian Church of San Jose. I am Ines Zapiola. My pronouns are she, her, and it is my pleasure to be your worship associate today. Our mission is to make love visible in all we say and do. We do this by honoring the wholeness, inherent worth, and dignity of every person, and by recognizing that we're all connected. You are truly welcomed here. If you're new here, please reach out to any of us. We invite you to join us after the service for coffee and refreshments in the social hour in Harry Potter Hall. There you can also visit the welcome table to learn more about this congregation and Unitarian Universalism. My husband, Steve Madden, and I started attending this church over 30 years ago, and we raised our now adult children here. And we hope you will find the same warm and supportive community we have found here. Our worship theme for the month is story. Stories have the power to make us feel discouraged or scared, also encouraged and hopeful. Today's service is about the stories we tell ourselves and others, and how they shape how we see and understand the world around us, and how we interpret what happens.
So, it's time for our story for all ages. So anyone who is young or young at heart could come and join, come sit up here in the labyrinth for our story. Today I have a special story. It was written by a friend of mine who some of you know, Emelinda McLean, who wrote it with me. And we're gonna have some people helping us tell the story today. So, up here. This is a story called The Woodcutter's Daughter and the Vanishing Forest. Once, there was an island. People had lived on this island for thousands of years. They had built houses that had grown into a village, and they grew food in gardens that turned into farms. They caught fish in the ocean, and everyone in the village had a job to do to keep things running smoothly.
One little girl was the daughter of a woodcutter, and every day she watched her father leave their home and head towards the forest with his axe over his shoulder to chop down trees for buildings and firewood. And one day, he decided she was old enough to go with him.
My father taught me how to cut trees down, and it's time that I taught you. It's an honest day's work. It puts food on the table, and lumber and firewood are things everyone needs. Business is good.
She had always believed her father that cutting down trees was good business, and she wanted to be good at it too. So when they arrived on the other side of the island, and she saw the swath of tree stumps stretching across the acres of land, she was proud of how hard he had worked for his family and his village. But she was also really good at math, and by mid-afternoon, she was confused.
Father, the village is growing faster than the trees. If we keep cutting the forest down at this rate, in a few years, all the trees will be gone. What are we going to do?
We're not gonna cut down the whole forest. That's impossible. If there was a real danger of that, someone would have told us by now, right? I'm not worried about the forest. I'm just doing my job and taking care of my family.
For the first time, she wasn't sure whether or not her father was right. So the next day, she went to the village to ask the carpenter.
Running out of trees? Now where would you get a silly idea like that? So silly.
Measurable scientific observation?
That sounds like a hoax. You're just trying to ruin my business. More buildings is a sign that the village is doing well. And if the village grows and the forest shrinks, then people are going to pay even more for their wood, and then business will be even better. That's good for my family and for yours. Everybody wins, believe me.
She did not believe him. So she went and talked to the farmers and the fishers and the crafters, and then the villagers began to talk to each other. Some people thought she was overreacting, but some people began to get worried. Would they run out of trees? Would their children's children ever see the forest? What would they build houses from? How would they build fires to keep warm and cook food? Was this the end of their village? Time passed, and people wondered and worried, and some grew more angry, and some grew more afraid. The carpenter would tell anyone who worked for him,
Anyone who thinks we're going to run out of trees is a moron, believe me. We're going to keep building, and we're going to build huge houses, beautiful houses, the best houses. If you don't like it, you can get out. Go find your own island.
but on the other side of the village, there were people so afraid of killing the forest, so sad and scared for the future, they stopped repairing their houses. They stopped building cook fires. They ate cold food and sat alone in the dark, shivering, looking to the edge of the trees and seeing the end of the world. It was a scary time.
Until one day, the daughter of the woodcutter met the son of the carpenter playing in the sand on the beach.
I'm gonna build houses like my dad when I grow up. Are you gonna be a woodcutter like your dad?
I don't know. No, I don't want to cut down trees.
But what else will we build houses out of?
They both thought hard. The boy looked up and down the beach. Then he scooped up a handful of mud, and it oozed through his fingers. He added some sand and mashed it together, but it was still too sloppy. She watched him for a moment, and then they ran up the slope to a patch of dry grass, grabbed a fistful of grass, and pressed it into his muddy hands. Together, they mashed and mixed and kneaded the mud and sand and grass together until it was all packed in tight, and they squeezed it into a rectangle and set it to dry in the sun. They had made an adobe brick.
Soon the other children playing on the beach saw that there were what they were doing, and they wanted to make bricks too. They worked together, they asked questions, they tried out different recipes to see what would make the strongest, sturdiest bricks, and they placed them in neat rows to dry in the sun. As night fell, parents came down to the water's edge to call their children home for dinner. And they saw rows and rows of bricks along the beach. The woodcutter and the carpenter approached, and their children called out excitedly, Dad,
Daddy,
Daddy.
Dad, come here, come here. Look what we made. We could build houses out of these brick instead of wood, and you and the other woodcutters could make bricks instead of chopping down trees.
Ugh. Who wants to live in a house made out of wood? Made out of mud? Not me.
But I want to live on an island that still has a forest.
I do too.
Look, it's more complicated than that, son. It's really, really complicated. Nobody understands how complicated it is more than me. Can you build a fire out of bricks? People need fire.
What if we all shared a fire? That would use less wood, and then we could all cook and eat together.
The woodcutter's daughter ran to the shore and brought back a clump of dried seaweed.
We could burn this too to save even more wood.
And now listen, kid. I've worked my whole life to build a business based on wood, and I'm not just going to give it up.
You had a business based on woodcutters, but I quit. I'm a brickmaker now.
The carpenter stared in disbelief as the children began gathering a circle of stones to make a fire pit. The other adults from the village had heard everything, and they looked at each other, and some smiled a little nervously, some looked as shocked as the carpenter. Adobe houses and shared cook fires were not normal, but among the many things that children are really good at, village children were really good at reminding adults that normal is overrated, and, and that being willing to change is how we grow.
So I want to tell you that this entire story ends with the entire village converting to sustainable energy sources and renewable building materials and a fair cooperative economy, and that they nurtured seedlings in order to restore the forest land that had been cut down. But I don't know yet if that's how the story ends, because this story isn't over. In some ways, we are all on that island too. It's called a metaphor. But I hope that all of you are the kind of people who are willing to pick up a handful of mud, get yourselves dirty, try new things, be willing to listen, and be willing to change. I think that's who we are. Let's give a thanks to our players this morning for bringing the story to life. So you may have noticed in the order of service, if you were looking, that some sheet music is there and different words for the song that we normally sing our children out to. So we're going to try for a little while, not sure how long, speaking of change, a different song. This is the Children's Blessing by the First UU Nashville Youth Choir. And so we're gonna sing it. It's got some hand motions to it. So I'm gonna invite our RE coordinator. Before you head out, we're singing together. Yes, I'm gonna invite Haley to help us in leading this song with our hand motions to go with it. So. Sing that one more time. That was the first time was kind of our practice round. So let's do that again all together. May your mind be open to learn. May your lips speak truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way. As you go your way. Thanks. And I realized I was supposed to invite you to share a little bit about the words and how they connected to our UU values, but I don't know if you wanted to add that now, although our kids are already out. So we'll save that for next week.
The offering, says Paul Dalzell, is an opportunity to recommit to this place and to these people. It is as much a ritual as singing together, lighting our chalice, or reciting our unison affirmation. It is a reminder of that form of love we call generosity. It is how we show that we believe it is what we believe is important, to worship together, to help our community, and to say yes to the values of our faith. You can donate online at sanjoseu.org/donate. Please make checks payable to FUCSJ. If you're making a contribution towards your pledge, please write pledge in the memo or select from the drop-down list. Our offering will now be gratefully received.
Announcements. You may have noticed that the outside of our sanctuary is missing. It doesn't have any scaffolding. Almost everything is down. A lot of great work has been done on the outside, which is awesome and amazing. I have forgotten, since I was only here briefly in April, how beautiful this building is after seeing it covered up for so many months. So today, after the service, though we're about to focus, or we're switching to the interior upgrades as part of our capital campaign. And so after the service, we have an information session to talk about some of the things that are being proposed, and we'll invite you to join us for that if you want to know more. Also coming up in a few weeks, in 2 Sundays, we're having a meeting that's open to the whole congregation. It's a ministerial startup weekend that's being facilitated by Melissa James from the UUA's Pacific Western region. She's our staff liaison. And so it's a way to come together and talk about expectations and get to know each other even better. I mean, I know we've been doing that, but getting to know each other better and how we work and how we operate so that we can have a healthy, flourishing ministry. So that'll be after the service on the 26th. And then later that week, I'm offering a spirit and practice class, which is a 6-week class starting January 30th, every other week, where we will engage in spiritual practices of various sorts. I know that during difficult times, both politically, in times like living through these political times, but also in times like I know this week has been particularly stressful for me as a native Southern Californian with all these wildfires, that we need ways to ground ourselves and to find resilience, and spiritual practices are really important for that. So if you're interested, please sign up. There's more information about all of those on the order of service and on our website. You do need to register for the class, so I hope to see you at some of those.
Bob Owen, would you come up? Yeah. Hi, Bob. And can we invite the Trasks up, please? Catherine and Matt, you go ahead and start. You do the first one. I'll finish up.
So now we're going to do a bit of a ritual saying goodbye to the Tarasks who have moved to Davis a while ago. How long ago?
6 months.
6 months ago, okay. And this is the first chance we've had to sort of formally say our blessings for them. When I first heard that they had moved to Davis, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was in the offing. And when I heard that they had moved, I thought, wow, that is amazing. She is going to have such a short commute. That's the first thing that crossed my mind, was Catherine was going to be so benefited by it, by living in Davis and going to Sacramento as often as you do. But when I just wanted to share a little remembrance of some time I spent with the Trasks, and not exactly a year ago, but almost a year ago, they did a worship service that I was the leader of, and I had such a good time planning it with them. And I hope some of you might remember it well. But the whole family participated in the worship service, and it was, the title of it was "The Purpose of Life is Living Life of Purpose." And Catherine shared excerpts from her book that she wrote called Daily Affirmations for Children. She did that for the children's story. And then she spoke about her commitment to social justice, especially for youth, and her long experience working with the justice for youth. And then Matt shared about his commitment to UU values, as he was a teacher for many years, a high school teacher. So it was a very inspirational service, showing one family that is living the principles of UUism, and I think we all were inspired by that service. I know I was, so that's my great memory. And I can only say that the UU Church in Davis is very, very lucky to have the Trasks as their members, and I know that they've already become involved. So we will miss you. I mean, we have missed you, and we wish the very best for you in Davis. Who's next?
Bob.
Well, after I joined the church, I was invited to join the men's group, which is a group for personal deep sharing among members of the church. And Matt was a member of the men's group already. And as time went on, we heard more and more about Matt's difficulties in various job situations. And so just the angst of those. But then, lo and behold, he went back to school and took classes to learn to become a teacher. What he really wanted to do was have an effect on mankind, and he could do that better as a teacher. And of course, he's now, I don't know how many thousands of years he's been a teacher, but he's been very successful at doing that.
So Robert Strong really wanted to be here today. He emailed me last night that he decided Anna's mother turned 90, and he wanted to be at her birthday party today and asked me to read for him. So I'm reading for Robert Strong. My name is Robert Strong. Yes, I am an old white guy with all that entails. Matt Trask has been an invaluable asset to our men's central group, to the Pacific Region, Western Region Men's Retreat, and to the members and friends of San Jose UU, especially of the teens. Much of what I know of Matt comes from being with him in the two men's groups. Both have confidentiality agreements, so for me a question is, how can I talk about Matt Trask when so much of what I know is confidential? I first met Matt as the father of Meg, who was friends with my daughter Eleanor. That was back when he was an engineer before he switched to teaching science, long before he retired from teaching science. Sometime in the last century, maybe 1997 or so, I attended the FUCSJ all-church campout. My marriage with Anna was shifting, and I was feeling very isolated. At the church campout, there was always plenty of downtime, games, songs, time to read, and for good conversations. In a conversation with Matt Trask and Sundar Mudapalli, They suggested I might benefit by attending the upcoming Pacific Western Region Men's Retreat, where they and others would be presenting workshops about an assortment of issues for maturing men, along with many other UUs from across Northern California. The context of the retreat was so compelling for me that I signed up for the team to plan the next regional retreat and also joined our local FUCSJ men's group. Our men's group has met twice a month from then through the present. Matt has been a stalwart and a model for our participation in the group. In our check-ins, we are encouraged to look at our personal emotional temperature and listen supportively without interruption, deep listening. Like nearly all the activities of San Jose UU during COVID, the men's groups switched to meeting online and had difficulty adding younger members. The membership aged and retired. Some moved out of the area. All have, shall I say, taken on the challenges of physical health. Since the return to in-person services, we have added new members. Our men's group now supports a longtime member physically located in Colorado Springs. Matt, as you are aware, has moved to Davis, yet through now has continued to participate in our men's group. The way Matt engages with our group has modeled for me so many ways to retain integrity, to maintain relationships, to guide actions by priorities rooted in love. That's a pretty good set of objectives for a life. To regain integrity, to maintain relationships, to guide actions by priorities rooted in love. Matt was involved in so many aspects of raising the teens of San Jose UU, countless backpacking trips in the Sierras, beach camping trips to Catalina Island, opportunities for kids to be more responsible for themselves, to be of service to each other. I feel so lucky to have benefited so well from the presence of Matt Trask and his family in my life and the life of my family and in the life of San Jose UU. Thank you, Trask family. Did you want to say something?
Did you? No.
Any response? No tears.
Can you call on your imagination as if telling a myth to a child? Put in the fantastical, wonderful, magical, add the romantic, the brave and the wild. Once upon a time there was a power so great that no one could know its name. People tried to claim it and rule with it, always such arrogance ended in shame. Thousands of years would pass in a moment, hundreds of cultures would come and go, each generation with a glorious calling, even when they were too busy to know. Then one day, after 2 millennia, which after all is a small part of time, hundreds of souls found their way out of nowhere to be on earth at the threat of decline. Let's all go, they moved as one being, even though each would arrive here alone. They promised to work in grace with each other to brave the beautiful planet called home. There promise that they could save it, but how exciting to give it a try. If each did one or two actions beautifully, complex life on earth might not die. And so they arrived in a spectrum of colors. The population on earth did explode. Some threw themselves in front of disaster, others slowly carried their load. Some adopted small girls from China, some lived high in the branches of trees. Some died as martyrs, some lived as healers, some bravely walked with a dreadful disease. They mingled among each class and each culture. Not one of them could be identified. Together they altered just enough moments to help the lost and the terrified, to step outside our egos and our bodies, to know for once that we truly are one. Then quickly we'd forget to remember, but that's okay, their job was well done. And Earth went on for another millennium, and now it's time for my song to end. This magical story of hope and of wonder invites you all to wake up and pretend to be fabulous creatures sent from the power, souls that have come with a purpose in mind, to do one thing that will alter the outcome, and maybe together we can do it in time. Can you call on your imagination as if telling a myth to a child? Put in the fantastical, wonderful, magical, add the romantic, the brave and the wild. The souls are coming back, the souls are coming back, souls are coming back, the souls are coming back.
I invite you now to join me in a spirit of meditation or prayer, to just drop here into this moment. Maybe that means putting your feet on the floor, closing your eyes, or softening your gaze. Noticing your breath. I offer these words from Odette Fulbright. Did you rise this morning, broken and hung over with weariness and pain and rage, tattered from waving too long in a brutal wind? Get up, child. Pull your bones upright. Gather your skin and muscle into a patch of sun. Draw breath deep into your lungs. You will need it, for another day calls to you. I know you ache. I know you wish the work were done. And you, with everyone you have ever loved, were on a distant shore, safe and unafraid. But remember this: tired as you are not alone. here and here and here also, there are others weeping and rising and gathering their courage. You belong to them, and they belong to you. And together we will break through and bend the arc of justice all the way down into our lives. Amen and blessed be. In a moment, I'm going to sound this singing bowl, and after I do, I invite you to speak into this space, or for those of you joining us online, to type into the chat any joys or sorrows that are on your heart this morning, any names or occasions that you would like lifted up into this community so that they might be held. And so as we do this, not worrying who hears with voices overlapping other voices, may we create a holding and embracing of all that is our lives. For Hannah and Kit and their kids. For the people who've lost homes, who don't know whether they've lost homes. For those living with violence. All that has been shared and all that is too tender yet to share, and we hold in the silent sanctuary of our hearts. We offer these into the embrace of this beloved community. And sometimes just saying something into the space is not enough. And so if you need a listening ear this week after the service, you can stop by the pastoral care table in the hall where you can light a candle or write in our book or talk to our pastoral associate of the week, Joyce Miller, or you can email pastoralassociates@sanjoseuu.org. Remember that you are not alone. I invite you now to join me in singing our sung meditation, Ancient Mother. Can we get the words up on the screen? There we go. Ancient Mother, taste your tears. One more time. Ancient Mother, I hear you calling. Ancient Mother, I hear your song. Ancient Mother, I feel your laughter. Ancient Mother, I taste your tears.
Sorry. Choose to Bless the World by Rebecca Ann Parker. Your gifts, whatever you discover them to be, can be used to bless or curse the world. The mind's power, the strength of the hands, the riches of the heart, the gift of speaking, listening, imagining, seeing, waiting. Any of these can serve to feed the hungry, bind up wounds, welcome the stranger, praise what is sacred, do the work of justice, or offer love. Any of these can draw down the prison door, hoard bread, abandon the poor, obscure what is holy, comply with injustice, or withhold love. You must answer this question: what will you do with your gifts? Choose to bless the world. The choice to bless the world is more than an act of will. I'm moving forward into the world with the intention to do good. It is an act of recognition, a confession of surprise, a grateful acknowledgement that in the midst of a broken world, unspeakable beauty, grace, and mystery abide. There is an embrace of kindness that encompasses all life, even yours. And while there is injustice, anesthetization, or evil, there moves a holy disturbance, a benevolent rage, a revolutionary love, protesting, urging, insisting that which is sacred will not be defiled. Those who bless the world live their life as a gesture of thanks for this beauty and this rage. The choice to bless the world can take you into solitude to search for the sources of power and grace, native wisdom, healing, and liberation. More, the choice will draw you into community, the endeavor shared, the heritage passed on, the companionship of struggle, the importance of keeping faith, the life of ritual and praise, the comfort of human friendship, the company of earth, the chorus of life welcoming you. None of us alone can save the world. Together, that is another possibility waiting.
We celebrate a diversity of human bodies. Stories have an incredible power to shape the way we think about our reality. At this time, when so many of us are feeling scared, upset, worried, angry, despondent, I think it's worthwhile to look at the stories we are telling. You might also think of these stories as frameworks or the lenses through which we view the world. Like a simple one many of us are familiar with, is the glass half full or half empty? Joanna Macy, eco-philosopher, Buddhist scholar, and activist, drawing also on the work of David Corton, teaches about 3 stories that define the times we are living in. The first story is the story of the industrial growth society. You can also call it business as usual. And we've been very successful at this. Comfort, convenience, security, no cost is spared. We cut down rainforests, blow up mountaintops, pollute our drinking water, exploit people in other countries and in our own country. In return for this growth and consumption, our society only asks us to just shut up and consume, just passively go along. And this industrial growth society measures its success in terms of growth. And growth in terms of what? Money, right? GDP. Corporate profits, whatever you want to call it. But of course, there's many other things we can measure success in. Other things we can measure the growth of: wisdom, health, beauty, justice, happiness. But we focus on monetary growth. And systems theory, which is the theory that helps explain how complex systems interact, tells us that if you are trying to maximize just one part of a system, you will send the whole system out of control. Which leads us to the second story, the Great Unraveling. And the Great Unraveling is known by many names: global warming, natural disasters of a greater scale, economic meltdowns, loss of biodiversity, mass shootings, global pandemics, billions of people living in poverty, increases in hate speech and violence, mass incarceration, endless wars, the 6th mass extinction. The Great Unraveling is the unraveling of the ecological and social fabric of our world. I think we see it also too just in the distrust we find amongst ourselves. All of these aspects of society unraveling into various threads. Now, the third story is the story of the Great Turning, of taking all those threads that are coming apart and sweeping them up into something else, into what Macy calls a life-sustaining society. And you can see this happening in many different areas: in protest movements, in legal battles, in farmers' markets and restorative justice, in deepening consciousness and new frameworks for understanding our world. So the thing about all of these stories is that they're all true. They're all happening right now. The question then becomes not what is true, what is happening. The question becomes, which one are you going to put your energy behind? We've been living in difficult times for many years now. For some of us, it's been much longer, in a time of uncertainty, of challenges, of disruptions, of loss. And living through that uncertainty of not knowing what comes next, an uncertainty that is not unknown in human history, but appears to be happening on such a large scale, larger than we have typically seen, and at a very fast pace. But as many of you have heard me say before, into this uncertainty is also possibility. Possibility to tell new stories, different stories. And so can we call on our imagination, as Holly Near sings about, to tell a new story? Because we can't know what the outcome will be. And so that calls us to act. And so for many of us, though, there's this question of, do you have hope? Or have you lost hope? But Macy suggests that it's actually not about hope. It's about putting our energy behind which story we want to be true. Are you going to use your gifts to curse or to bless the world? To the carpenter and the woodcutter, everything was just fine. We just keep cutting down trees and building houses because that's the way things are done. And as we start to run out of trees, then the invisible hand of the marketplace will magically fix it by making them more expensive. And in their mind, that's a good thing because then they will make more money. And so they just wanted to carry on with business as usual and ignore the fact they couldn't keep growing indefinitely on an island with finite resources. Then, when the woodcutter's daughter pointed out that the islanders were chopping down the trees much faster than they were growing back, many of the islanders realized they were headed for crisis, but their response wasn't particularly helpful either. They just retreated to their cold, dark huts and fearfully waited for everything to fall apart. But the kids of the island realizes that they didn't want to put their energy into continuing business as usual, nor did they want to spend their time simply bemoaning the sorry state of their island. And so they came up with solutions that allowed their village to live more sustainably. By sharing fire and cooking meals together, they were also increasing their sense of community. Which story do you want to put your energy behind? At this time of political upheaval, we can also see these three stories playing out in their own particular way. The stock market is humming along after the election. And in fact, the parts of the stock market that improved most dramatically were private prison companies, where stock prices for the two biggest private prison companies almost doubled overnight, as well as fossil fuel companies and financial corporations who stand to benefit from increasingly repressive policing, and expanded deportations and gutted environmental regulations and consumer protections. Although I was gratified to note that actually fossil fuel company prices went back down and they're actually lower than they were after the election. So perhaps there's reason to hope things are bigger than the United States and our own, what happens in our country. And we are shifting. That is the great turning in action, friends. And so all of these things, though, that have increased are bad for our society, except for those who stand to profit. And so that's the allure of business as usual. It wants to lure you into a false sense of complacency. Your 401k is doing just fine, so just keep living your life the same as you always were. And it's tempting to do so. Don't worry about all the bullying, the lying, the hate, the corruption and graft, because you'll be better off financially, whether that last part is even true or not. You can see it perhaps most clearly, a shift in Silicon Valley as many leaders in the tech industry, many of whom have often supported Democratic and leftist politicians and positions, are flying down to Mar-a-Lago to be, as one of our members called them, handmaidens to the new administration, because they want to maintain their company's bottom line. But any such security is false. And as Archbishop Desmond Tutu says, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. So we must keep reminding ourselves that this is not normal, and we must reject going along with business and as usual. But with the calamity of this election, I think there is a real temptation, I know I felt it in me too, to go into deep despair and just resign ourselves to that great unraveling. The damage, it could be done to civil rights, to the poor and to the middle class, to immigrant families, to religious freedom, to the environment, to women's rights and LGBTQ rights. It's heartbreaking. But we also know that we've been through this before, and that there's something on the other side, and so that there is possibility, and everything we can do to help bring about that life-sustaining society, to swoop up those unraveling threads and help sustain people is important work, is life-saving work, is transformative work, will help build that future that we want to create. All three stories are happening. Which one do you want to put your energy behind? You can also, for my last example, see it in the fires. Business as usual means that insurance companies will use this as an excuse to raise their rates and to kick people off insurance, although I just found out this week that apparently California is one of the more profitable states for insurance companies, despite the fact that they're kicking people off fire insurance. We actually offset their books for other states that are less profitable, but that's the market. You can raise your prices and raise income. Do it. You can get away with it. Disaster capitalism, landlords jacking up rents, sometimes $1,000, $2,000 overnight because of displaced people needing to find a place to stay. And of course, that's capitalism. That's as it should be, because the free market is best, and these profits will, of course, eventually trickle down, right? Then there's this tendency to look at the situation and despair. Not only all that has been lost, but all that will be lost. That wildfires will get worse and worse because of global warming. There will be more disasters, and there is truth to that. But I was intrigued by an article I read this week that focused on the work of wildlife expert Jack Cohen and fire historian Stephen Pine, that maybe thinks that the situation isn't as bad and unmanageable, that we can't just do our best and hope that the fire doesn't hit our particular neighborhood, that there are many things we actually can do to prepare. Part of the reason is that we've been thinking about fire in the wrong way in the last few decades, as we focused increasingly on woodlands and urban interface versus just urban fires. Over 100 years ago, the Great Chicago Fire devastated the city of Chicago, and people responded. In fact, the last great urban fire was the 1906 San Francisco fire after the earthquake. Since then, after that, there were no major urban fires that caused massive devastation for almost a century. In fact, the most recent, the shift back to the first one was actually in 1991, the East Bay Hills fire in Berkeley and Oakland, which killed 25 people and destroyed 3,280 homes and hundreds of other buildings. Between those two fires, we got better at changing building codes and making it so that things were less likely to burn. But as we thought we had gotten a handle on it, we started thinking about things differently and maybe got a little too lax. And so this isn't necessarily to shame, but to say that there are opportunities, there are ways we can make our houses safer, that we can make lives safer, and it takes effort. So we may not be able to stop wildfires as global warming continues, although we can manage them through controlled burns, but we can definitely stop them, or at least hold them greatly back from spreading in urban areas. And we see also the great turning, that creating a life-sustaining society in the reaction, both in those shifts to how we think about preparing for this new reality, this different future, but also in the way that people show up for each other, of inviting strangers, friends, family members into their house, of donating clothes to people who fled with nothing but the clothes on their backs, to people who are making meals. And so all of these things are happening at the same time. All of these stories are true. The question becomes, which one do we want to put our energy behind? I think you know the answer. I invite you now to rise in spirit and join me in singing our closing hymn, We'll Build a Land. It's number 121 in your hymnals. Changing a few words from the words in the hymnal. If you're following along on the screen, it'll be easy. But if you're following along in the hymnals, we're just changing a few lines to make it more inclusive. So in the chorus, instead of come build a land where sisters and brothers, we change it to where people together to be inclusive. And then instead of anointed by God, which has, to me, colonialist overtones, and maybe a little bit too much self-importance, to filled with the Spirit. So come build a land where people together filled with the Spirit may then create peace. If that sounds confusing to you, the words of the chorus will be on the screen. Let us sing. Captives go free, where the oil of gladness dissolves all mourning. Oh, we'll build a promised filled with the Spirit. Filled with the Spirit, may them create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. Come build a land where the mantles of praises resound from spirits once faint and once weak, where like oaks of righteousness stand her people. Oh, come build the land, my people we seek. Come build a land where people together, filled with the Spirit, filled with the Spirit, may them create peace, where justice shall roll down like waters, and peace like an ever-flowing stream. I invite you, as our service comes to a close, to reach out and take the hand or bump elbows or touch shoulder, make some connection with the person, with people around you as you feel comfortable. To those of you joining us on Zoom, we invite you to send your energy to us and to each other as we send ours back to you. With the words of the Reverend Vanessa Southern, may the stories we tell name the largest truths of what was, of what is, and pull us forward to what should be, as stories were always meant to. Go in peace.